"We got married yesterday," she said, smiling like she'd won a prize. I stood there holding the casserole. I'd baked still warm, still unwanted. The morning light was kind, at first spilling across the porch of my little house in North Georgia. I'd imagined this day differently. A porch crowded with laughter. My son's hand around a bride's waist, me fussing over flowers and food. Instead, there was only Vanessa polished as a magazine cover, standing at my doorstep like a courier delivering news that wasn't meant to make me happy. Her perfume was sharp citrus and steel. Daniel waited in the car engine, running eyes fixed on his phone. "I thought you might like to know," she continued, adjusting the strap of her white purse. "We did it small, simple. We're planning a bigger celebration later." Later, I thought. After everything is signed, after you decide what's left for me. I forced a smile. "Congratulations. You both look settled." Her grin twitched. "Thank you, Mrs. Carter." "Not Mom. Not even Evelyn. Mrs. Carter, like I was the last bill she had to pay off before moving in." She reached into her purse and drew out a cream envelope. "Daniel wanted you to have this. It's just paperwork, insurance, formalities for the family. He didn't want to bother you with it." My hands, still warm from the oven, took the envelope automatically. Her nails brushed mine, cold and deliberate. "No rush," she said, already stepping backward. "Just sign where marked." "Will I see you at dinner?" I asked. She laughed, soft and hollow. "We're flying to Savannah tonight. Honeymoon." The car door slammed. Daniel waved without looking at me. One of those quick half gestures you give a stranger who once helped you with directions. I stood there, casserole cooling in my arms, the smell of baked chicken and thyme drifting into the empty yard. The mailbox was stuffed again, flyers, unopened letters. The small clutter of a life lived mostly alone. Inside, the clock over the mantel clicked louder than usual. I set the dish on the counter and opened the envelope. Inside were several pages of fine print, a blue tab marking one line. Signature of Evelyn Carter, guardian beneficiary. I blinked. Guardian of what? There was no note, no explanation, only her faint floral scent on the paper. I turned on the kettle out of habit. Steam fogged the window where dust had gathered on the glass. Outside, the swing creaked once in the breeze, one empty chair rocking gently beside another that had belonged to my late husband, Dennis. It looked like a conversation paused mid-sentence. The water boiled shrill and restless. I poured it over a tea bag, hands trembling. Through the thin wall, I could almost hear the echo of my son's teenage laughter, that deep in the throat sound that used to fill this house when he raced down the hall, asking if I'd signed his permission slips. He'd always been in a hurry back then, too. I sat at the table, the envelope spread before me, and read line by line. Words about joint accounts, transfers of authority, and financial consolidation slithered through the legal language. I wasn't sure what any of it meant yet, but something felt off. The way Vanessa's smile had tightened, the way Daniel hadn't spoken. On the counter, my phone buzzed with a message. "Thank you for understanding, Mom. We'll talk later." I typed back, "Be safe." Then I deleted it. The casserole cooled, untouched. A slice of sun fell across the photo of our family trip to Blue Ridge Mountains. Dennis, holding Daniel on his shoulders, both of them laughing at something I couldn't remember anymore. I brushed dust from the frame, then from the stack of unopened mail beside it. Beneath an old magazine was a birthday card from last year, still sealed. His handwriting on the envelope read, "Sorry I couldn't make it home." The kettle clicked off. Silence again. I carried the papers to my bedroom, opened the drawer of the nightstand, and pulled out my late husband's silver fountain pen. It still gleamed faintly under the lamplight. He'd used it to sign the mortgage, our wills, even the permission slip that let Daniel join the school band. The pen felt heavy now, as if it knew this wasn't a signature born of pride, but of warning. I traced my name on the line in the air just to see how it would look, but I didn't touch ink to paper. Something in my chest whispered, "Wait." I slid the papers back into the envelope, tucked it under a stack of old photo albums, and leaned back against the bed frame. Through the open window came the sound of cicadas and the faint hum of a car speeding down the highway, their car maybe already miles away. I whispered into the empty room, "Congratulations, my son," and felt the words collapse before they reached the wall. Outside, the sky darkened to peach and gray. A wind stirred the mailbox door until it clanged softly, a reminder that life goes on even when it forgets you. And as I closed the window, I realized my hands still smelled of time and paper. The scent would not leave no matter how much I washed. As Vanessa's car drove off, I opened the envelope and found not an invitation, but a legal document I didn't remember agreeing to. That night I heard laughter from Daniel's old room, her voice low and sharp. "Once it's in my name, she can't touch a cent." The sound slid down the hallway, like a cold draft, thin and cutting. I was standing at the sink, hands deep in soapy water, rinsing a plate no one had eaten from. The house carried every noise, the tap of heels across old floorboards, the ripple of bed springs, the small, cruel music of a woman who decided I was an obstacle, not family. Rain pressed its face to the kitchen window, beading and gathering into slow lines that cut the world outside into trembling stripes. I turned off the faucet and listened. Vanessa's tone softened the way people talk when they're selling a lie that benefits them most. "He trusts me," she said, voice drifting through the vent like perfume. "He signs whatever I put in front of him." Then a pause that made my stomach tighten. "She'll sign too. She always does." I dried my hands on a dish towel and stood still under the hum of the fluorescent light. The night smelled like lavender tea and wet soil. On the table, the envelope lay exactly where I'd left it, edges squared, innocent as a hymn book. I rested my fingertips on it and felt a slow heat rise in my throat, not anger exactly, more like a long, tired ache that had finally found its shape. When Daniel was little, he used to burst into this kitchen in his socks, sliding across linoleum, asking if we could eat apple pie before dinner just this once. He'd laugh with his whole body, loud enough to shake the magnets on the fridge. The memory thinned as I listened to him now, his voice upstairs, a murmur, an occasional, the sound of someone nodding along to a story he didn't write. Love can make a good man clumsy with truth. I put water on for tea. The kettle started a low simmer, that restless pre-whistle I knew better than my own heartbeat. I tried to picture Dennis at the table, sleeves rolled, the silver pen between his fingers. "Read twice," he used to say, "sign once." He'd look at me over the top of his glasses and smile, a private joke between people who had counted bills and blessings together. The chair where he sat was empty now, pushed in neatly under the table. I touched the back of it and felt the smooth wood cool my palm. Upstairs, floorboards creaked. Vanessa's laugh sharpened. "She's not even going to ask questions. She wants to be helpful." The words landed harder than the rain. Helpful. That word had followed me my whole life. Bring a casserole, pick up the check, hold the secret so someone else can sleep. Helpful becomes invisible if you're not careful. I poured the water and watched the tea bag bloom like a bruise. The clock over the stove clicked to the next minute. In the hallway, the air felt denser, the way it does before a storm doubles back. I carried my mug to the living room and sat in the rocker by the window. The porch light cast a faint cone on the steps. Moths stitched their nervous patterns through it. I rocked once, gently, then steadied myself. If I kept moving, I knew I'd never stop. From down the hall, a door closed softly. Another door opened. Vanessa's heels crossed the floor in crisp, controlled beats. The sound made me think of a judge entering a room. She spoke again. Lower now, the words slipping through the old houseboards. "By next month it will all be consolidated. She won't be a problem." I set the mug down. The tea sloshed and rippled, tapping porcelain. Something precise assembled inside me, like balancing a checkbook, like laying out church envelopes by the numbered weeks. I stood, went to the coat closet, and reached up to the small tin box where I kept what mattered. Copies of the will tax receipts, a faded postcard from the mountain trip, and a photograph of Dennis with a fishing rod, and that grin that forgave. First, and asked later. Beneath the photograph lay a thin, ribbon-tied packet of papers. He and I had signed a decade ago. The trust, the house, the instructions we promised to respect when grief made everything blurry. The silver fountain pen lay where I'd left it, tucked into a soft sleeve. its clip catching lamplight like a small, reliable star. I held it and felt the weight of good decisions. I wasn't a lawyer. I wasn't a judge. But I had been a careful woman my whole life. Careful women can be dismissed. They can also be underestimated. I returned to the kitchen and spread the contents of the envelope beside my own documents. The language tried to sound protective. If I'd been a different kind of tired, I might have believed it. Phrases leapt out in the exact places they hoped. I wouldn't look authority of agent transfer, convenience, temporary consolidation. Whoever drafted it counted on habit, not scrutiny. I heard the refrigerator kick on then, the soft click of the porch light timer going dark. The house felt smaller, like the walls had taken a step closer. In the quiet, I remembered a different night, the one after Dennis's funeral, when Nora from next door sat at this table and wouldn't let me wash a single dish. "You don't owe anyone your strength tonight," she'd said, pouring more tea, pretending not to see how hard my hands shook. Up the hall, the laughter started again. "Tomorrow," Vanessa said, bright as brand new chrome. "I'll have her sign tomorrow." I folded the envelope shut, pressed along the seam with my thumb, and put it aside as if it were a letter from a stranger who had mistaken my address. Then I collected my own papers into a neat stack, lined their edges until they formed a clean, stubborn rectangle, and slid the silver pen on top like a final period. I breathed in through my nose, out through my mouth, the way the choir director taught us when hymns asked more air than we had. The rain eased. The house settled. I turned off the kitchen light and let the darkness remind me of every time I had survived it. At the threshold to the hallway, I paused and listened for any sound that would make me change my mind. None came. I walked to my bedroom and opened the nightstand drawer. Inside, next to the forgotten birthday card and a small bracelet Dennis bought me at a county fair, was an old stack of business cards bound with a rubber band that had long since gone brittle. I sifted through them: plumbers, the dentist who retired, the florist who knew our anniversary by heart, and found the one that had waited patient as a promise for 10 whole years. She takes out an old contact card from her drawer, the name Lawrence Hill, attorney at law, and dials the number. "You see, Lawrence," I said softly, "they think I'm blind. Let's not tell them otherwise yet." He laughed once quietly, like a man who'd heard that line 100 ways, but still found it worth admiring. The office smelled of lemon oil and old paper, the kind of scent that says things matter here. I sat in a chair too big for me, clutching my purse like it might remind me who I was. Through the window, Athens downtown shimmered in the pale afternoon light. It had been raining when I arrived, and my shoes still carried bits of gravel from the parking lot. Lawrence Hill hadn't aged much since the last time I'd seen him. Still the same salt and pepper beard, the same patience behind his glasses. He opened the folder I'd brought and scanned the papers Vanessa had handed me. His eyes moved fast, his jaw tightening every few lines. "Well," he said, finally leaning back. "She's ambitious." "Ambitious," I repeated. "That's one word." He tapped the blue tab with his pen. "You sign this, and they consolidate everything, your accounts, the house, even the old trust your husband left. It's written like convenience, but the outcome's ownership." I took a deep breath, the kind that feels heavier coming out than going in. She thinks I'll just sign. Daniel trusts her. He doesn't question her. "Then don't fight," Lawrence said. "At least not the way they expect. We rewrite the structure quietly, file new clauses, make it look identical. When she believes she's closing the door, she's actually locking herself out." The plan sounded foreign and dangerous on his tongue, but also fair. I'd spent my life solving other people's messes, balancing checkbooks, baking for funerals, smoothing Daniel's childhood tantrums until he could sleep again. Maybe it was time to tidy my own story. He turned to the computer, typing with quick, precise strokes. "I'll need your ID signatures and a witness. We can file before end of week." Outside, the window thunder muttered, and the rain returned soft as static. I thought of Vanessa's laugh the night before, sharp, rehearsed. I wanted her to hear silence for once, the kind that makes you wonder where your confidence went. While Lawrence worked, my eyes wandered over the diplomas on his wall, the photographs of his grown daughters. One of them looked a little like Daniel had it, 10 stubborn jaw, bright eyes, heart still untested. Something in me softened. I didn't want revenge. I wanted fairness. And I wanted my son to understand the difference someday. Lawrence printed a new set of documents. These mimic the originals, he explained, sliding them toward me. But clauses 3 and 6 redirect control of property back to you. We'll attach a protective trust. Your husband's old terms still apply. The pages whispered as I turned them. I saw my name, Evelyn Carter, printed clean and sure, and beneath it, the space waiting for my signature. The silver fountain pen felt heavy in my hand again. I thought of Dennis leaning across this same kind of desk years ago, telling me that caution wasn't cowardice. It was love wearing armor. Sign twice, Lawrence said. And initial here. Ink spread in neat curves, steady, despite the tremor that sometimes caught my fingers these days. The moment the pen lifted, something inside me steadied too. My heartbeat slowed, finding an older rhythm, one that belonged to the version of me who didn't ask permission to exist. Lawrence gathered the pages and clipped them. I'll register this quietly. We'll schedule the final witness signing at your son's dinner. Let her believe it's a formality. I blinked. You mean the signing she's planning? He nodded, lips curling into a small, knowing smile. Exactly that one. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of something close to joy, not the loud kind, but the deep humming kind that lives under your ribs. She won't see it coming. That's the idea, he said. It's not trickery if you're restoring what was stolen. We sat in silence for a moment, the printer humming like a heartbeat between us. The rain thickened outside, turning the street lamps to blurs of gold. I realized my hands no longer shook. Before leaving, I opened my purse and found a small notebook I kept for grocery lists. On the last page, I wrote, "Read twice, sign once. Trust yourself." I tore it out and slipped it into the folder with the contracts. A small reminder, in my own handwriting. When I stepped back onto the wet sidewalk, the rain had already stopped. Puddles mirrored the neon sign of the diner across the street. I stood there a while, letting the smell of wet asphalt fill my lungs. Somewhere behind the clouds, the sun was fighting to break through. Driving home, I passed the church, where Dennis's funeral had been held. The bell tower looked softer in the dusk, almost forgiving. I parked in front of my house and sat there a moment longer, listening to the engine tick itself quiet. Upstairs, the bedroom window glowed a square of warm light, where Vanessa was likely sorting receipts or choosing which smile she'd wear next. I smiled back at that window unseen. Let her think she's winning, I whispered to the steering wheel. Some lessons only sink in when they cost everything. Then I locked the car, gathered my folder, and stepped into the calm. The night air smelled of magnolia and rain, a mix of memory and promise. Tomorrow the game would begin, but for once I'd be the one who knew the rules. To family, Vanessa toasted. May we always get what we deserve. I smiled. Oh, sweetheart, I thought you will. The dining room shimmered with a kind of cold elegance, everything shining but nothing warm. A chandelier dripped light over polished silver and white linen. The table stretched longer than it needed to be. Daniel's new house was perfect in the way magazines are quiet, sterile, too proud of its reflection. Vanessa had arranged everything, the menu, the seating, even the scent of white roses and cedarwood candles that stung the air. I sat at one end, the guest of honor. Though it was clear I was only there to make her triumph complete, she'd placed me beside the window, away from the conversation, so she could face me whenever she pleased, like a cat watching its prey breathe. Mom, Daniel said, trying for casual. I'm glad you came. Vanessa wanted tonight to feel like a celebration. No stress, just family. Family, she echoed, swirling her wine. And a few loose ends tied up. The roast chicken gleamed under the light, its skin brushed with honey and thyme. I could smell the faint sweetness from my seat. I'd made that same dish every Christmas when Daniel was a boy, though tonight its flavor felt borrowed, emptied of meaning. She'd learned the recipe from one of my old cards, copied it down years ago, probably without remembering where she found it. So Evelyn, Vanessa said suddenly, voice lilting like a polite threat. Did you get a chance to look over those forms? The words hung between us, sharp and bright. Daniel's fork paused midair. "Vanessa," he murmured a warning. "What?" she smiled. "It's just paperwork. Grown-up stuff." I dabbed my mouth with the napkin. "I did," I said calmly. "Took my time with them too. You were right, they needed a woman's touch." Her smile faltered just a fraction, the kind of small crack that lets the truth peek through. She raised her glass again, tilting it toward me. "To family, then. May we always get what we deserve." My reflection in the glass smiled back, soft, composed, and waiting. Dinner went on, but the air never loosened. Daniel tried to fill it with stories from work, nervous laughter between each sip of wine. The jazz record spinning in the background crackled faintly, skipping now and then, like even the music wanted to leave. Vanessa's laughter was too loud, her questions too pointed. "You've lived in that old house for what, 30 years? Must be so full of memories. Don't you ever get tired of holding on?" Her words were sugar-coated acid. I met her gaze steady. "Memories don't get heavy when they're real." Daniel cleared his throat. "Let's not." But Vanessa was already sliding a folder across the table. "Anyway, we might as well handle this now. The notary will send the final copies tomorrow. Just a few signatures left." The folder landed beside my plate, the same blue tab peeking out. She didn't notice how I looked at it the way you'd look at a snake behind glass. I laid my hand gently on the cover. The silver fountain pen my husband's gleamed in my purse like a heartbeat. I waited until everyone had refilled their glasses. Vanessa poured with one hand, talking about honeymoon plans in Savannah, how she'd found a property by the water she might invest in. Every word was a brick in the wall she'd built around herself, and she couldn't see the cracks. When the moment felt right, I lifted the folder, opened it, and glanced through the pages as though they were a grocery list. "Here," I asked, tapping the line marked for my signature. She nodded, all triumph and confidence. "That's right. Sign and date. We can all relax then." Daniel shifted in his chair, uneasy. "Mom, you sure you're okay with this?" "I'm perfectly fine," I said. The pen slid from my purse with a soft metallic whisper. I smoothed the paper, steadied my wrist, and signed my name with deliberate grace, each letter carved cleanly, not shaking once. The room seemed to lean in closer, listening to the sound of ink scratching paper. When I was done, I set the pen down beside the glass. The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Vanessa exhaled a little too loudly, then broke into a laugh. "Finally," she said, folding the papers like a magician closing a trick. "Everything's ours." Daniel smiled weakly, though something uncertain flickered behind his eyes. He didn't notice the way I looked at him, kind, almost tender, the way you look at someone about to wake from a long dream. The chandelier light trembled, casting ripples of gold across the table. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Outside, thunder murmured somewhere far off, echoing through the Georgia hills. I reached for my water, took a slow sip, and set the glass down carefully, lining it with the edge of the plate. "Yes," I said at last, my voice calm and even. "Ours indeed." Vanessa's laughter rang again, but this time, the sound didn't fill the room. It bounced back, hollow, unsure. I glanced toward the entryway, where shadows gathered in the doorway. Everything was in place now. Every word she'd spoken tonight had been recorded in the kind of silence that remembers. Tomorrow, she would learn what ours truly meant. The candles hissed softly as their wax reached the end, the flames bowing low. Across the table, Vanessa caught my eye, searching for some clue of surrender. I gave her none. Her toast still echoed in the air. "May we always get what we deserve." And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. Vanessa laughs as she folds the papers. "Finally, everything's ours." Evelyn answers, still smiling. "Yes, darling. Ours indeed." Vanessa said, "Lawrence," stepping through the doorway, "you might want to read the fine print before celebrating." The room seemed to tilt toward him, the way a congregation leans at the first note of a hymn. Vanessa's smile froze around her teeth. Daniel half rose from his chair, relief and confusion fighting in his eyes. The chandelier's crystals chimed faintly from the shift of air as the front door clicked shut behind our guest. Lawrence didn't hurry. He slipped a leather folder from under his arm and placed it on the end of the table as if setting down a verdict. Candlelight glossed the brass clip. "Forgive the intrusion." he said, voice mild. There was a clerical detail we needed to complete witness and acknowledgement. It'll only take a moment. Vanessa recovered fast. She poured herself more wine with a practiced hand. We're in the middle of dinner, she said, sweet as syrup. You can leave the papers. I'll sign whatever is necessary. I'm sure you will, Lawrence replied, opening the folder. He lifted the first document and laid it between the candles. This is the instrument you've been so eager about. She slid it closer with one finger. Yes, that one. Then you'll appreciate. Clause 3. He tapped the paragraph with the flat of his pen, the metal ringing lightly against the glass plate beneath. It establishes the controlling trust. Settler Evelyn Carter. Trustee also Evelyn Carter. Vanessa blinked. That's not. She snapped her gaze to me. That's not what we drafted. Drafts are curious things, Lawrence said. They evolve. Daniel swallowed. What's going on? I folded my napkin and set it beside my plate. The room had gone very quiet. Even the record in the corner had reached the end and turned to a soft, cycling hiss. Go on, I said. Clause 6. Lawrence continued turning the page, specifies that any consolidation or convenience authority is limited by the trust's terms. In practical English, access requires the trustee's consent. No consent, no access. Color crept into Vanessa's cheeks, bright and blotchy. This is a mockery, she said. The originals were superseded by filings. Lawrence said gently, that mirror your version but correct the custody path. Recorded this afternoon with the county effective upon execution. He looked at Daniel. Your mother is protecting the estate your father intended. Nothing more. Daniel stared at the documents, then at me. The boy he had been pushed through the man he was, and for a second I saw both at once, his eyes at 6 when he'd gotten lost in the supermarket, the relief when he found my hand again. Mom, he managed. Did you when? This week, I said. Quietly. Vanessa laughed, too high, too brittle. You can't be serious. I had everything reviewed. I have emails. I have... She rifled through the stack bracelets, clattering. Where's the authorization for my agency? Where is the transfer convenience? Right where you asked, Lawrence said. He drew out another page, slid it across. But subservient to the trust. And subject to revocation by the trustee if misuse is detected. You'll find that in the last subparagraph. Her mouth opened, then closed. She scanned the lines, flipped to the back, then returned to the clause, as if the meaning might change on second reading. The grandfather clock in the hall began to tick louder, or perhaps we were simply hearing it now. Wax guttered on one candle, bowing the flame. This is entrapment, she whispered. I shook my head. This is accounting. Daniel reached for the paper, reading quickly, lips moving. He stopped at my name. It all goes to you, Mom. Control, I mean. It stays where it always belonged, I said. Where your father left it. Vanessa set the page down with care, like handling a live thing. You had no right. The sweetness had drained from her voice. What remained was edged and raw. You were supposed to sign where I marked. I did sign, I said. Where I marked. The chandelier hummed faintly with electricity. Outside wind rattled the hedges against the glass. Lawrence shuffled one last set of papers and produced a letter on county letterhead. Acknowledgement recorded. Here's the stamped copy for your files. He placed it near Vanessa's elbow. She didn't touch it. Daniel looked between us. Vanessa, did you know the first version would take Mom's house? She rolled her eyes. It's consolidation, Daniel. Streamlining. We'd have moved her somewhere easier, more manageable. It's my home, I said. She can't manage it. Vanessa snapped. It's sentimental clutter. The words struck the table like a hammer. The empty chair at the head seemed to lean back, appalled. I felt the small bracelet on my wrist, where Dennis's fingers had fastened it once at a county fair. I laid my palm on the tablecloth to steady myself. Sentiment built that roof, I said softly. It also paid the mortgage. Lawrence cleared his throat. We're done here. Mrs. Carter, he meant me, has executed all required instruments. Going forward, disbursements will track through the trust. Any deviation can be enjoined. Daniel pushed back his chair. It scraped the hardwood in a blue, stunned sound. Vanessa. She stared at me as if I'd stolen her reflection. You can't make me look foolish. I didn't, I said. You did, when you underestimated me. She lifted her glass with a shaking hand and took a swallow so large the stemware chimed against her teeth. The red left a ring on her lip. She didn't notice. Everyone in this town, she said, to no one in particular, runs on favors. You think a few lines of boilerplate will stop me? No, I said. But the clerk's stamp will. She swung back to Daniel. Say something. He looked tired in a way I recognized the fatigue of a person who finally sees both halves of a story. I thought we were building a life, he said quietly. Not a case. The candles threw soft halos over everything, over the meat knife poised on its block, over the framed print of marsh grass in golden hour, over Lawrence's pen waiting like a gavel beside the platter. The house had turned into a courtroom without the wood paneling. Vanessa's chair went over as she stood. The crash shook the table. Flatware jumped. She didn't pick it up. She grabbed the packet and raked through it again, as if a different ending might be hiding between page 9 and 10. When she found nothing, she reached for her glass. Vanessa, I said, and my voice surprised me. Calm, almost maternal. Sit. Read. Then decide whether you want dinner or a lawyer. Her gaze flicked up wild with insult. For a breath, we faced each other across the linen. A mother who had spent a life making rooms comfortable. A woman who thought comfort meant control. She lifted the glass higher, the wine catching the light like a bruise, and something in her expression finally tore. Vanessa throws her wineglass against the wall. You tricked me. Evelyn stands steady as ever. No, dear. You tricked yourself. The house was quiet again. No shouting, no laughter. Just the sound of peace settling where chaos used to live. Morning light crept across the floorboards, soft and golden, the way forgiveness feels when it finally stops pretending to be anger. I stood by the kitchen window, a mug of tea warming my palms. The lavender garden outside shimmered in the early sunbeads of dew, still clinging to the petals. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel like it was holding its breath. Daniel's SUV pulled into the driveway just as the church bells from town began to chime. I could see him through the window, shoulders, hunched jacket, unbuttoned hair uncombed. Not the confident man who used to walk in with his wife on his arm, but the boy who once forgot his lunch and came running back through the school gates out of breath, clutching a small apology. I opened the door before he could knock. You came early, I said. I didn't sleep much, he admitted. His voice was small, unfamiliar. He followed me inside, pausing when he saw the dining room. The table was still bare from last night. No plates, no candles, just the faint outline of a wine stain and the echo of words that couldn't be taken back. She left before sunrise, I told him. Packed her things. Didn't say goodbye. Daniel nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. I know. She called me from the road. Said she needed space. Space can be good, I said gently. It teaches you what fits and what doesn't. He looked around as though seeing my home for the first time. The photos on the wall, the chipped teapot, the creased curtain by the window. His eyes caught the silver fountain pen resting near the ledger on the counter. Dad's pen, he said softly. I nodded. Still works perfectly. He sat down at the table, elbows on the wood face in his hands. I should have seen it, Mom. I just wanted to believe she loved me for me. She said you were paranoid, controlling, that you'd never let go. I sat across from him. Love doesn't mean handing someone the keys to your life, I said. And it doesn't mean you stop using your eyes. He exhaled shakily, a sound between grief and relief. I don't deserve forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't about deserving, I said. It's about not carrying the fire after the house stops burning. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Outside, the neighbor's dog barked once, then the sound faded into the hum of bees over the lavender. The air felt lighter, washed clean by truth. When I rose to refill our cups, I noticed the empty chair beside him, the one where Vanessa had sat last night smiling over lies. she thought would last forever. I left it untouched, a quiet reminder. I'm going to make things right, Daniel said suddenly. Pay back what she took. Help with repairs, the trust paperwork, whatever you need. I shook my head. What I need, I said, is for you to live better than we taught you. That's payment enough. He tried to smile, but his lips trembled. You really mean that? I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. You're my son, Daniel. You'll always have a place here. But you have to build your own, too. The clock ticked softly between us. The house, once a courtroom, now felt like a chapel. Later that morning, Nora Evans came by carrying a warm apple pie. You didn't think I'd let you celebrate justice on an empty stomach, she teased, setting it on the counter. I laughed, a sound that felt new and old at once. Stay for tea, I asked. Only if you tell me how you managed that grand finale last night, she said with a grin. Daniel chuckled under his breath. You'd better listen, Nora. She's been playing chess while the rest of us were learning checkers. I smiled, slicing into the pie steam, curling like a prayer into the morning air. Oh, it wasn't chess, I said. Just accounting. We ate in companionable silence for a while. Sunlight touched the photos on the mantel, each face bathed in gold. The family we were the lessons we'd earned. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn sounded long and low, like an ending that also meant beginning. When Nora left, Daniel lingered by the door. Will you be okay? He asked. I already am, I said. But thank you for asking this time. He nodded, eyes glassy, then walked toward his car. I watched him pause at the mailbox, take a deep breath, and turn back to wave. For the first time, it didn't feel like goodbye, it felt like promise. I went back inside, rinsed the cups, and wiped down the counter until it gleamed. Then I opened my brown leather notebook, the one Dennis used to tease me about, and wrote a single line, when they forget your worth, remind yourself quietly. The words looked steadier than my hand felt. I closed the book and stepped outside. The lavender glowed purple in the sunbeams, drifting lazily between blooms. The gate creaked when I pushed it open, the sound sweet and certain. The air smelled of sugar and soil and second chances. Evelyn opens her garden gate to sunlight. Today I begin again. There are moments in life when silence teaches louder than words. Evelyn's story is one of those moments. She spent years believing that love meant patience, and patience meant endurance. But endurance without respect is only quiet suffering. When her own son's wife tried to rewrite the meaning of family into profit and possession, Evelyn found her strength not in shouting, but in standing still. That calmness, that grace, became her greatest weapon. In a world where kindness is often mistaken for weakness, she proved that boundaries are not walls. They are doors we choose who to open for. She didn't seek revenge, she sought balance. The moment she reclaimed her signature, she reclaimed her dignity. This story isn't about contracts or bank accounts. It's about the invisible lines we draw between love and self-respect. It reminds us that forgiveness does not mean forgetting. You can forgive and still refuse to be diminished. You can love and still demand honesty. You can protect your heart without hardening it. Evelyn's courage came not from anger but from truth. And truth, when spoken softly, can still echo through generations. Her victory wasn't in defeating Vanessa, it was in teaching Daniel the cost of blind trust and the beauty of rediscovering one's mother not as a giver, but as a person with worth. Family should never be a battlefield for control. It should be a circle of care where each person guards the other's dignity as fiercely as their own. The tragedy begins when that circle turns into a cage. Evelyn broke that cage quietly with ink patience and the unyielding grace of a woman who finally remembered her own name. Sometimes justice doesn't shout, it whispers enough. Sometimes the strongest act of love is learning to walk away from those who misuse it. And sometimes healing begins with a single sentence spoken to the mirror, I matter too. Her story lingers like the scent of lavender in her garden, a promise that peace is possible after betrayal, that renewal is not only for the young, and that life still blooms where boundaries are tended with care. So tonight, if you're listening, and you've ever been taken for granted, if you've ever given more than you received, remember Evelyn's quiet victory. Your worth isn't up for negotiation. Your kindness is not a debt someone gets to collect. Stand tall, speak calmly, and when the time comes, sign your name to your own freedom, because dignity is the one inheritance no one can steal. Have you ever faced a moment when love and self-respect pulled you in opposite directions? What did you choose, and what did it teach you? If this story touched you, press 1 the comments and subscribe to Auntie Tales, where every story reminds us that it's never too late to reclaim your power, your peace, and your name.